So today I'm joined by Sarah Henderson of Yolk Design, a brand and design agency she founded in October 2019. Sarah is an experienced graphic designer that enables her clients to grow their business with standout branding and design. More recently, Sarah was appointed as a wellbeing advisor for the Workplace Wellbeing Association, whose vision is to empower businesses to grow successfully by helping them create happy, productive, and compassionate teams. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you for joining me on the Happy Tradie podcast. It's great to have you on.
It's an absolute pleasure, Steve. Absolute pleasure.
So we met, it's probably coming up to maybe 2.5 years ago, when I joined BNI. I think we joined at similar times, or you were there just before, before I joined. How's BNI been for you?
Really good, actually, really good. I think, as an owner of my own business, there's quite a lot of time spent on my own. And I think BNI offers such an amazing support system to me. And, yes, it's not for everybody, but it honestly has been such an amazing membership for me to be in, not just for the business, but for me personally as well, from, both business growth ideas and solutions on things that I'm struggling with, but also, the mental health aspect, just that support system was phenomenal. And I remember actually us supporting each other through COVID a little bit when we were both, some difficult days there, but I think the groups like that just are really valuable, really valuable to me, certainly.
And lots of trades I know are members of BNI, and they get a huge amount from it. And like you say, it's that support network that you get through being a part of an organisation like that. Because being in business can be a bit of a lonely place at times. So just tell me a little bit about what inspired you to get into your profession, graphic design, and kind of what was the catalyst really for you starting Yolk Design?
Well, I've always been creative. I was one of those kids at school. I mean, I used to draw horses and sell them for 50p, probably one of my very first entrepreneurial missions, I guess. I've always loved creating things, and actually, I consider myself really lucky that I've got a job that I love. And the reason that I've got a job that I love is because I simply followed what I enjoyed to do and made that my profession. It was never a goal to be a graphic designer. I didn't even know what that was, when I was younger. But I enjoyed creating and designing and painting and all of the things that kind of went with that. So followed that as a passion, went to college, then went to uni, started off as a junior designer. Still enjoying it, great. Continue that, 20 odd years later, here I am. And I think it's been an amazing journey. And I've certainly come out of myself throughout growing from that young child who used to draw horses. And I think part of the reason why graphic design, specifically branding for corporates and companies is really important to me, because I was really shy as a kid. You wouldn't believe it now, but I was really, really shy. And I've got a twin sister, and she used to ask for something and I just used to nod, and it was like living behind glass. And I remember wanting to communicate and having things I wanted to say, but just being really apprehensive and not really being able to do so. And I think the way that I kind of look at it is to help companies communicate more effectively with their branding and with their visual comms. It's like helping them break through that wall, that glass, which I really understand in a very different way, but for me there's a similarity there. So creating Yolk Design was actually part of being able to do that in a way, taking all the good things that I'd learned throughout my career, working through many amazing agencies, and actually create something that I feel is going to enable people to do that far more successfully, and help the companies that really need that support. So companies that are trying to do good in the world, to get that support and to really flourish and use my skills to help somebody do what they do better. I mean, that's what we're all here to do at the end of the day, isn't it? So Yolk Design kind of gives me that platform, and it's brilliant.
And you started Yolk Design back in October 2019. What was the sort of catalyst for kind of wanting to make that leap from working agency side to actually going out on your own? What was the sort of spark there?
Yeah, I think most creators, I'm not going to say all, but I think most creatives have that dream that one day they'll work for themselves and do it all their own way, And I got to a point in my career where, I was quite high up in a team, kind of taking on quite a lot of the directorship kind of decisions. And, you kind of think, well, do I want to be doing this forever? No, for somebody else. So that was when I thought, well, this is going to be my last opportunity to really do this. I had a young family, and salaries start to increase, and you go, well, it's going to come to a point where I can't actually physically, financially able to do this. So it was kind of like a now or never moment, really. So I took the leap 3 months before, well, it was about 3 months before the pandemic hit. So it's not been an easy ride. And I know all small businesses have been in the same boat.
Yeah, it's been tough for everybody. Just talk to me about some of the clients, because obviously I know you and I know some of the clients that you work for, but I'm fascinated in your involvement with motorsports. How did that come about? You've done a lot of work in motorsports.
Yeah, that's true. So I've always had a passion for motorsport. I was the only one of my friends really who used to get up at like 3 a.m. to watch the Brazilian Grand Prix, all of that kind of stuff. I used to actually be a marshal at Silverstone as well. So,
Oh, wow.
Volunteering my time to actually support the sport as well. But I've always loved four wheels. Really exciting to me.
Yeah.
And to get the opportunity to work, I've done yearbooks for the FIA, World Touring Car, and Intercontinental Rally. I used to work for an agency that did the kind of hospitality for Lamborghini Super Trofeo. I've rebranded race teams. I've done liveries for Ferraris, and really just
Incredible.
Some of my dream, some of my absolute dream opportunities have kind of come forward for me there. So, and it's been amazing. And I think now I'm working for Yolk Design. I do support automotive and motorsport clients, but it got to a point where I thought, actually, what's the impact that I'm having and my business is having, and is it the impact that I necessarily want to make? So then it was kind of, well, actually, I'd love to support clients that are doing good, clients such as Imabi, which are an incredible provider of making sure that communities are safe. They've created their own data platform and create apps and products from there. It's incredible. People who are making tools to help children with dyslexia read better. Companies who make food for the wildlife in your garden, but not just cheap food, but like food that's actually nutrition, is going to help the wildlife in your garden flourish. Sustainability, helping our planet, all of these things. If I can support companies who do those kinds of things, it's just an incredible way to kind of really feel like you're making an impact,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I also totally resonate with the getting up at 3 a.m. bit. People think I'm mad when I sort of say I'm getting up to watch the Australian Grand Prix, which is on at like 5 a.m. or something. But if you
absolutely, yeah. I remember the buzz now, that adrenaline. It's just great.
Oh, amazing. Looking forward to the start of the new season. So yeah, companies that do good in the world, that's probably quite a nice segue actually into local trade businesses, because they are right at the heart of their local communities, and a lot of them do help locally with sort of local projects, and are quite heavily involved in the local community. So thinking about our sort of tradies, and the experiences that you've got in and around sort of brand and design, and kind of bringing the two together, what's your sort of advice for trades to have an impact locally, and use their brand, as a sort of vehicle to do that?
Yeah, I think trades is actually quite an interesting one when you start talking about brand. And I think most trades would say, well, we're bringing off the hook. We're booked up weeks in advance. What do we need to focus on our brand and our marketing for? And when you look at it like that, you could say that was a completely valid argument. But I think there's a way that it becomes really, really valuable when you start looking at the work that potentially you're taking on. Is it the work that's going to be the most beneficial for you and your company? Is it the work that you enjoy doing the most? Or are you just saying yes to everything? And I think building a brand helps elevate you above all of the other tradies in your area who are doing the same thing as you, and really speak to your client and talk to them about the specialisms that you have. Because there are loads of different roofers, plumbers, chippies, but they've all got different specialisms. You've all got your own absolute unique traits and things that you enjoy the most to do, how about filling your days with the things that you love to do the most, rather than the jobs you go, oh, well, I don't really enjoy this. I don't really enjoy this element of the services that we do. So the branding, creating that true branding platform actually helps you communicate better the jobs that you enjoy to do more, sell more of those. It really helps you cut through the amount of the competitors that you have, and it's a really strong competitive market. It doesn't matter what trade you're in. I don't need to say that to any tradespeople. I'm sure they all know that. But it's really interesting when you have got an issue, and I think quite a lot of the time when you're bringing in a trade, it's a distress purchase. Something's gone wrong, something's broken, there's a leak, the electrics aren't working, the fuse box has got, whatever, the boiler's blown up. I've been there, horrendous. And so I think it's really interesting to be able to say we're genuine and we can prove it. And we can prove this because we understand who we are. These are the client testimonials. This is how we're presenting ourselves to you. For instance, I had a roof leak. I've still got a roof leak. And I had two guys come round, two different companies come round. One of them stood in my garden and had a look at the window that was leaking and gave me quite a large quote. He hadn't even got up on a ladder and had a look at what was wrong. He's like, well, this needs doing, that needs doing. The other guy spent 15 minutes up on the roof and was like, right, this is it. He took the tiles off, had a look, and told me exactly what it was going to be, exactly what was wrong and what needed fixing. He's gone away to see if he can find the part, and he's like, it's nowhere near that other guy's quote. And the experience for me was completely different.
Yeah.
Branding can help you communicate that difference really, really effectively.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's the difference, and we see it all the time between national organizations that can charge, a hefty price. They're trading off the back of a really strong brand that people trust, and whether it's right or wrong. But, an example in the sort of plumbing and heating world is, British Gas, Boxed and other sort of larger players will often charge a lot more than, your sort of local kind of independent plumbing and heating business, because they're trading off the back of a strong brand. People trust the brand, so they know if something happens or it doesn't quite happen to plan, then they've got a stronger case for recourse, and that that doesn't happen so much with a sort of smaller local business. So I was chatting to one of my plumber clients over the weekend, and they're an industry which is getting really squeezed. In fact, the whole trades industry is getting really squeezed with rocketing prices of materials. But of course, on the other hand, we've got this kind of horrible perfect storm of a cost of living crisis. So homeowners are much more likely to be shopping around for the best deal, the best price, not always the cheapest price, but looking for the best value. And of course, when you bring those two things together, you're being squeezed on one side by increasing costs, and then you're getting squeezed on the other side by consumers who want the cheapest deal. It's a really tough combination. So I'm a strong believer that if you have invested in your brand, and you have got a strong brand, that can alleviate some of those stresses.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it's about building up trust. Because again, it's kind of two halves of the weighing scales. If you go with a larger company, you've got the security of knowing they're a larger company, but you don't know the person who's coming in your home. If you're using a trusted local supplier that you've perhaps used before, you know them, you trust them, you trust what they're going to say, you know that they're going to do the right thing, and you trust them in your home, and I think that's a big thing as well. And I think that's a benefit of using a local tradesman rather than some of these bigger companies. And, using your brand properly to really showcase who you are as a person. You don't have to hide behind your logo, your visual identity as a company. Show who you are, because that's what people are buying. It's kind of, we say it in B&I, know, like, and trust. I mean, that's what it's all about, and especially when you're getting access to people's homes and dealing with things that, leaks that have damaged, and it's emotional. It's emotional for your clients, and to show them that you understand that actually goes a really, really long way.
So what tips do you think you can share to trades that are looking to sharpen up their visual image, their brand? I mean, we see this sort of classic kind of trade branding logos where they're just using their name and a typeface, and it doesn't really bring across much character. So I wonder if you've got any tips that you'd like to share, for trades that are looking to sharpen up their image.
Yeah, I think one tip would to be put yourself in it, and that just doesn't just mean your name, but a bit of your personality. Even a bit of wit and humour. I mean, life is far too serious, I always think, and there's nothing wrong with having a bit of wit and humour in the way that you communicate to your audience. I think consistency, again, is key. Really, really important. That goes for any brand. But I think, again, it's really easy for trades to go, well, I'm busy, I can just stick something on Facebook and then put something on my website. They don't look the same. A client might actually come into contact with your business 3 or 4 times in the search of the services that you're selling. They might not know that you're the same company because they look completely different. But imagine the power if you're still doing the work, but you're making it look consistent. They actually know, oh, it's them again. Oh, they've come up again. Oh, that's interesting. Much more powerful. So consistency is key as well in terms of how you're positioning yourself in your community.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think consistency from offline advertising, like vans and leaflets and business cards and brochures, and then how that transcends online. There's often a big disconnect because they're just not like you said. They're busy people. They're running around. They've got lots of jobs on anyway. But if you have this inconsistency, you reduce the level of trust. People are confused by who you are and what you stand for, and I do see that quite a lot. And it doesn't take a lot to kind of have that little bit of attention to detail. It's a bit like a retailer. If Tesco had a different sign inside their store on the outside, and their bags had different logos, and it would just all look totally disconnected, and you wouldn't necessarily sort of have that trust.
It's small changes, but actually, and they don't take a lot of effort or money or time, but it's just that consistency does have a big impact. I think another element that is quite important for trades is, and of course it's very different. I sell creative services, right? It's not a tangible, it's not a mug, it's not a water pipe, it's not a boiler. So there's a bit more abstract in how you kind of approach communicating what you sell. And I think actually it's really easy for trades to fall back on the objects that they sell. We sell boilers, we sell, whatever it is that they sell. Actually think about it not from within your company out. What do we sell to our clients? What problems are we solving? Think about it from the outside in. What is it that your clients are coming to you for? Because they actually 9 times out of 10 won't know.
Yeah.
They know that they've got their toilets leaking through their ceiling onto their oven. That actually happened to me. It was very gross. But they don't know what's wrong, so they don't know what they're looking for. So what is it that they're looking? What is it that you're helping them to solve? And target your communications around that. Have you woken up this morning and none of your lighting works? Let us lighten up your day. I mean, that's a terrible one, but do you know what I mean? Look at it from the other way around, rather than the inside out. And I think it resonates a bit more and creates a bit more emotional resonance.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with sort of branding is, how it repels and attracts people. And I talk about this quite a lot with how trades position themselves locally, because, some will only want the premium work. And won't be interested in the sort of smaller kind of one-off, really small jobs. They want the premium work where there is more opportunity to earn better margins and ultimately better profits for their business. And a brand is a great way to repel and attract in equal measure. And I do talk to them quite a lot about that, if they have a very basic looking brand that hasn't had much sort of creative input, then really they are going to attract quite a broad church of customers. Whereas if they invest in their brand and get a really strong presence, and a presence like you were saying about what problems they solve, and the brand can convey that really strongly, so that they do attract the better quality clients that they seek. So in terms of sort of mistakes, what mistakes do you think trades make when it comes to their brands, sort of in your experience?
just thinking that it doesn't matter, actually, like you say, that not really having even a logo or any consistency with colours, because they've got full books for weeks, months. What does it matter? But actually, it will make your business run smoother. It will help you do more of what you enjoy. It will help you spend less time at work necessarily, because you're not running uphill all the time. You know where you're going. You know who you need to speak to. You know how to speak to them. You know what you want to say. And I think, I think not feeling it's applicable to them, and that branding is for big businesses. Yes, it is, absolutely, and we see that day in, day out. The manufacturers of the cars we drive, the computers we buy, the shoes we wear or don't want to wear, like you said. We all have brands that we would never, wear in a million years. But branding is for everybody, and branding can be just as important for a one-man band as it is for a big global corporation, because it's talking about you and who you are, and putting yourself out there in the most authentic way. And I think believing that it's not for them is quite a big mistake, but an easy one to make.
So authenticity is key, right?
Absolutely. Well, this is what I say about humour and wit, and I know we've had this conversation before, Steve, where, there's no point in you going and seeing your trades clients in a suit, because it's a complete disconnect. It doesn't represent you, really. It doesn't really represent the kind of people that they would necessarily feel comfortable talking to. So it's about going, do you know what? This is me authentically. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. This is what I don't want to work for. And you'll attract the right people who actually want to work with you and value you for what you can offer them. Very
true. Very true. One of the reasons I was excited to get you onto the podcast was because, I'm really interested in sort of well-being and mental health. And we were talking, before we sort of started recording this, a little bit about how, trades is an industry that often doesn't talk about mental health problems and struggles, but it's one of the industries that is still dominated by men. And, there is that slant towards men struggling a lot more with mental health. Suicides in men is the highest. So I'm really interested in sort of looking at your involvement with the Workplace Wellbeing Association as a wellbeing advisor, kind of how you got started in that. Again, what was the catalyst for starting that, and thinking about advice that we could share with trades that are perhaps struggling a little bit with two things, really. One, knowing how to create an environment if they are employing staff and subcontractors within their business, knowing how they can create a happy and productive and compassionate environment, and also for themselves, how they can look after their own sort of mental health. So how did you get involved with the Workplace Wellbeing Association?
Workplace wellbeing has always been really important to me, and I think I had a really positive experience when working for an agency. Grassroots no longer exists, unfortunately, but I suffered child loss in 2015, and it was only in hindsight, years after, I realised the impact that they had on my recovery and the rest of my life since. I say it sounds cliched, but really the way that they handled it saved my life. I had 3 months off fully paid. They were there for me in every aspect. There was no meetings with HR, or it was just like, we'll pay you, you come in when you're ready, and I think it's interesting when you start looking at workplace teams, there's this assumption that everyone has to pretend they're okay. And I think, to support teams to be freer and more open with how they're feeling, like genuinely, honestly, how are you feeling today? And ask twice. That was one of the things that I learned on my mental health first aid training course. Ask twice, how are you today? And then ask again, because the first one's almost a greeting nowadays. It's not really, everyone goes, yeah, great, And then, well, actually, how are you? You've been a bit quiet this morning. And then, oh, well, actually, and people start opening up. And I think the best way for company owners to actually create the environment that feels safe and feels open and authentic is to be that themselves. Show your vulnerabilities. You know, when you're having a bad day or you're struggling, I mean, you don't have to put it around the workplace newsletter, but just be honest about it. Do you know what? I'm really, you know, I'm struggling with this today, and actually showing that vulnerability and being that in front of your staff will allow them to feel that they can do the same, and that if they need to talk to you, or they need support, or they need to tell you about something that they're struggling with, that they can, that you'll actually understand. And it doesn't mean you'll open the floodgates and everybody will start rushing to you. It just means that they know that they can. And that in itself makes you feel much more secure and happy, and know that the company that you work for and the people that you work with have got your back, you know, that you're a team together, but not just in what you're doing, but how you're feeling, how you're living. You know, it's really vitally important for that workplace wellbeing space, you know.
I love that. What you just said there, every podcast that I seem to record, you know, there's a real standout sort of nugget that kind of, you know, that just kind of hits you between the eyes. And it's that ask twice. I'd never really thought of that, ask twice. Because like you say, the traditional greeting of, hey, how you doing? Or, you know, you okay? Most people default to, yeah, no, I'm good, thanks.
But it's just a greeting, right? It's almost just like a hello nowadays.
Yeah.
Actually, to ask again, or say, you know, you've been quiet the last week, or I noticed this. Show them that you've noticed, and ask again. Yeah, ask again, because it, you know, and if you think of the times that somebody has done that to you, the second time you really think about the answer. It's funny, I don't know why, but it really does make a difference.
Yeah, massively, because it's opening the door for that further conversation. And I think all too often we sort of take that first response from people as their actual genuine response, when actually, if you did ask that follow-up question, you know, I bet more often than not, people would sort of open up a little bit more.
Absolutely. And when your team asks you, be honest.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay, but, or actually this morning was rubbish, and explain why, and be honest. You know, be honest with that response. And it can feel vulnerable sometimes. And I'm not saying, you know, open up your heart completely, but I think creating an environment that's like that, and, you know, tradespeople are really, really busy. You know, that they're flying from one job to another. They're working extremely long days, you know, very little time to kind of stop and really assess, well, actually, how am I thinking? How am I feeling today as well? Because it's one thing to another, to the next, and it's quite often than not, you know, with the smaller cases, not with the larger corporate jobs, but it's a crisis job. There's you know, somebody desperately needs you. They're upset. They're having an emotional day, and you take all that on board as well. So yeah, it's just kind of, in terms of their own well-being, I would say stop for 5 minutes every now and again throughout the day. Just ask, how am I doing? What do I need to make myself feel better? Might be a wee break, might be a cup of tea, might be a quick walk, fresh air, right? Get outside, come out from under the sink or the loft or wherever you are, bit of fresh air, bit of a stretch. It's amazing how just asking yourself, reassessing every now and again can really make a difference. And I think, I mean, the involvement with the Workplace Wellbeing Association is amazing, and they try and support many different industries, and industries are all very, very different. You think it's going to be the same, but actually it's not. They're all very different, and they have different needs and different requirements in order to promote that well-being throughout their teams and their people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've always found really vital for my own well-being, and again, we're all different, but is creativity. And yes, okay, I paint as well. It's not part of my business, but I paint, and I've quilted, and, you know, all manner of different things. But I love that, and I do that because it makes me feel happy. And I think there's a place for everybody to bring creativity into their lives, whether you can paint or not. People go, well, I can't draw, therefore I'm not creative. Don't listen to your art teacher, because if they ever said that, they were wrong and probably shouldn't have been an art teacher in the first place. But we're all creative, and I think making time for that is also vitally important. And that doesn't mean painting. It could mean playing an instrument, go home, jam on your guitar, play Lego with your kids, you know, dance around the kitchen like an idiot. These are all ways to creatively use our brains outside of the day-to-day, very scheduled, the way that trades are. It's very scheduled. It's very time pressure. There's a lot of pressure in it. Release yourself from that and just enjoy some time doing something creative. Doesn't matter the outcome, even if it is drawing and it's rubbish, doesn't matter, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is being creative, not what you're creating. It's not a product. It's actually a way to spend your time that makes you feel happier.
Yeah,
so if you can try and do that throughout the day, throughout the week, twice a week, whatever, it's really important.
Absolutely. I think trades, like we were saying a minute ago, kind of have this perfect storm where it is a sort of kind of feeding ground for mental health issues, because they're being squeezed financially on one side. They're trying to pack more and more jobs into the day. So reducing their time and their ability to step outside the van and just have 5 minutes for themselves before they get on to their next job. I was chatting to a tradie couple of weeks ago, and one thing he does is put on a podcast in between. Usually most of these trades are kind of working in a few postcoded areas, and they normally have anything from 5 minutes to sort of 15-20 minutes between the next job, driving to the next job. So what he does is just to kind of tune out a little bit, is put a podcast on. And that might be a podcast on business. It might be something on sort of wellness. It might be, something sort of learning and development related, but just something to sort of take them out of the day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's different for everybody. It could be a podcast. You could sit and meditate for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You could smash out 30 press ups.
Yeah.
I mean, there are loads of different ways to give yourself that time back that you feel, actually, that was just for me. It doesn't even need to take long, but yeah, all of those things are really great ways to kind of rebalance.
So authentic leadership is really important, is what you're saying. If you do have vulnerabilities yourself, it's not hiding those from your team. It's sort of embracing it in a way and showing them that it is good to open up and show a little bit of vulnerability, right? Absolutely.
And the same with our friends and families as well. This isn't just workplace well-being, this is life.
Yeah.
Like, it's not work and play. It's not, the office and family. This is just living. For me, they're not separate, because I'm me no matter where I am. And so therefore I need to make sure that it spans right across. And I think being authentically ourselves, it's banded about so much, isn't it? The authenticity. You go and look at any brand company values, it's probably on there. And what does it really mean? But it just means be you. Celebrate you. Be who you are. The society we live in makes us all pretend to be something that we're not, whether that's on social media or in business. We're all pretending to be better or more or happier, but just be you. And actually, when you start doing that, the people around you will start doing the same. And whether that's at work, or whether that's in your friends group, or whether that's at home with your family, and then suddenly you realise you're surrounded by this huge, amazing support network, and suddenly you're all talking to each other, you're all understanding each other more, connecting more. Life's a happier place when you do that.
Absolutely. So that's a great sort of segue into my final question before we wrap up. And thank you so much for sharing some amazing thoughts and advice there. But the final question I just wanted to ask you is, what's your definition of happiness? We've talked about, sort of ways to create a happy workplace environment, ways to make yourself happier as a tradesperson and amongst your day. But for you, what's your definition of happiness? What's your sort of happy place?
God, not ending on an easy one there, Steve. It's a big one, and again, I think the definition is different for everybody. But for me, happiness is about, no matter what's happening, being able to be grateful for something. And I think there will be lots of challenges ahead for all of us, and life's not always happy. And you know what? You can't expect it to be. It's not going to be. But if I can find a bit of gratitude every day, then I know actually I'm happy. I'm happy because there's something to be grateful for. And it's about freedom and simplicity as well for me, not overcomplicating my life and my day, and just, stopping and pausing every now and again. And you know what? Today's been awful so far, but what am I grateful for? And then you go, and then that makes you smile. Absolutely. And so I think gratitude probably would be my answer to that massive life question.
It's an interesting one. It sort of gets people really sort of thinking a little bit. And, when I answered it kind of to myself, it was like a really simple one. But when I've asked it to everybody, that's really been the reaction. It's quite a massive sort of question to ask, what's your sort of definition of happiness? Because of course it is individual, to everybody. No one's definition of happiness is really ever going to be the same. It's kind of it's built around your life and your experiences in life. But I love your answer of gratitude. I think that's really important. I think spending some time thinking about what you're grateful for in life, and using that as a way to sort of fuel your happiness is definitely one of the best answers that we've had. So thank you for
sharing. I'm sure you say that every time, Steve. For me, it's a bit about perspective as well, and your mindset and how you approach life, because experiences will happen to you, right? And we can't control that, but we can control our responses to them. And it's something that actually I tried to explain to my daughter once when she was like, "Oh, school's boring." And I was like, "Well, if you go in like that, absolutely, you're going to have a terrible day, aren't you?" And she was a bit like, "What?" I said, "Well, you could fall over on the way to school, right? Scrape your knee. You could stand up and go, 'Oh, it's ruined my day. Look, I'm bleeding. It's sore. I can't walk properly. I've ruined my tights. That's it. My day is completely ruined.' Or you could stand up with a big smile on your face and go, 'Oh, aren't I lucky I didn't break my leg there?'" Exactly the same experience, completely different perspective, which has changed the rest of your day. Your mindset has actually completely reframed that experience from one that what could have been completely negative to something that wasn't. And we all have that power to do that. We can't dictate our experiences, but we can shape how we respond to them.
I love that. And what a great way to sort of wrap up this podcast with those thoughts. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being a guest on the Happy Tradie podcast.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Steve. Thank you for asking me to be on. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Awesome. And you can connect with Sarah on LinkedIn. I'm going to drop, as I always do, I drop a link in the show notes to where they can find you. And obviously yolkdesign.co.uk is another place where they can find you. And one thing that we didn't talk about, but I'll let the listeners go and find out when they connect with you on LinkedIn, because I know you do share some of your art on LinkedIn. So and that's one thing we haven't talked about. Maybe that's we can come back and talk a little bit about that in a future episode. But thank you so much for joining me on the Happy Tradie podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Have a great day, everyone.